Welcome to Out is Through, a podcast about living a meaningful life in difficult times. I'm Larry Lariosa, and I'm a life coach and licensed marriage and family therapist. In these uncertain times, maintaining a sense of well-being and purpose feels more challenging, yet more important than ever. In this podcast, I'll feature guests who have used their life experience, passion, and creativity to find personal meaning and deeper connection. As the saying goes, the only way out is through. And I hope these conversations help inspire you to live life to its fullest. So thanks for tuning in and enjoy the episode. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Out is Through, a podcast about living a meaningful life in difficult times. My name is Larry Lariosa, your host, and today's episode is titled Why Nature Matters. And I am thrilled to interview James Guay, licensed marriage and family therapist, who shares with us his journey to find meaning, purpose, and connection through nature, and his YouTube channel, Living More Fully. James Guay is a psychotherapist in private practice since 1999, helping clients throughout California live more authentic and fulfilling lives. Alongside his therapy work, James is a passionate advocate for integrating mindfulness and nature as powerful tools for emotional resilience. An avid hiker and backpacker, he shares lessons from the trail, from the patience of switchbacks to the perspective of summit views, as metaphors for navigating life's challenges with presence and compassion. On his YouTube channel, Living More Fully, James creates guided meditation videos filmed on location during his hikes, offering viewers a chance to slow down, reset, and reconnect with the beauty that still exists in the world. Okay, well, I'd like to welcome to today's episode James Guay. Hi, James.
Hi, nice to be here.
Great to have you. It's been many years. James and I overlapped at some of the nonprofit work we did back in the day. It seems like decades ago.
Forever and a day, yeah.
It's as live as we're going to get because you're in West Hollywood and I'm in Oakland, so.
Exactly. It's good to see you face to face on screen, regardless.
Yeah, great. Well, there is a lot happening, and I know where you are in LA, there's been a lot happening. So my first question is just, how are you doing in these times?
Yeah. Oh, it's stressful. Let's be honest. It can be really depressing, really overwhelming, just the state of the world. I hear it seems like every generation of our age over the course of time saying, things are worse now than they were when I was younger, but it really does feel that way in so many different ways. And so, yeah, it's challenging as it is for a lot of my clients, I'm sure yours as well. And to be going through it at the same time as therapists and as clients and processing it is really tremendously valuable and challenging for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like coming on the heels of the pandemic where we were going through that with our clients, that was new. But also I always have wanted to be and find ways of being more human as a therapist because I was not trained to be human. Um,
Yes.
that wasn't sort of in the school of therapy that I was trained in. And so both the pandemic and all the social justice stuff and the political turmoil has just
Mhm.
given, I think, it's sort of taken down a wall, which I like in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah. There's greater transparency. And I think, one of my grad school professors I respect the most really was, the thing that she would often say is therapy is a soul to soul process.
Mm,
And it's who we are that helps our clients grow,
yeah.
right? And so I think that transparency there's a depth of connection and understanding, if we can relate from our human experiences and the human condition,
Yes.
that is really powerful in the work.
Yes.
So,
Yes, and I think especially as queer LGBTQ folks, that is just all the more important that we are mirrored and that we are seen and that we are safe and that we, I mean, so much of our history as a people in, centuries past has always been communal, and we are also the healers in societies past, and so there's something about being part of that and being doing that in community, which both of us I think have that history of working in the queer LGBTQ community, but have expanded that both in our private practices. So let's start with your story. Where did you grow up and how did your early story shape you and where you are now?
sure, sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian household, very conservative, very puritanical in many ways. In retrospect, at the time, it's all I knew, so I didn't know any differently. Yeah, and in San Fernando Valley, went to private schools all the way from elementary to high school, and a son of a pastor, PK, pastor's kid,
Mm.
and recognizing that I had same gendered attractions. That was, kind of a mind, thing where we it just had to reconcile the two, right? The religious beliefs I had at the time, that being LGBTQ meant you're going to hell, and pain and suffering for an eternal life, which didn't sound all that pleasant to me, pretty traumatic.
No.
And to then, recognizing, eventually, picking that apart and having some critical thinking skills and being able to understand that just because I was told those things to begin with and I adopted that mindset didn't mean that I had to continue that throughout my life, especially because it was leading to so much self-hatred and self-harm. It was really destructive. So that process of going from self-hatred to self-tolerance to self-compassion to self-love and back and forth, it wasn't linear, is really instrumental in who I am today as a therapist and helping my clients be much more kind and generous and loving of themselves as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that comes across in your work, which I want to get to. Before we take that leap, I want to kind of go back and
Mhm.
I mean, we both found ourselves in our early in our career working with queer youth,
Yeah,
and your story really, I think, informs that work,
yeah,
right? That there's something about our upbringings and trying to work that stuff out.
mm,
When we're out of it and we're able to love ourselves and heal ourselves, we want to kind of go back and support those who are still in that process and unfortunately are still going through a lot of the trauma
yeah.
and religious trauma, which I think that you shared. One thing I know about you is you were a gymnast.
Yes.
And gymnastics, we share that in common. I was not a gymnast. I wasn't that athletic, but it's a sport that I hold near and dear to my heart. I grew up with it, and I'm curious if you're comfortable sharing that. Yeah, what that journey was
Uh-huh.
in terms of you just becoming an adult, but also navigating queerness and navigating mental health, because gymnastics is a very
Yeah.
I mean, we're hearing much more about it, but a lot of those athletes are so resilient and
Mhm.
have had to endure
Right.
a culture that hasn't always been kind to them. So I'm
Absolutely.
just curious.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I really discovered it through a church I was attending, and they had a large gymnasium, full gymnasium, and then they created a program for gymnastics and acrobatics. And I did it. I had a natural proclivity for it. It felt fun. I was better at that than basketball or baseball or any of those kinds of things. And then I sort of tapped out with what I had the capacity to do there. And so the coach there recommended a particular location in San Fernando Valley with a coach who had coached Mitch Gaylord, which, you know,
Mm-hmm.
viewers, listeners may not know, but in 1984 was on the U.S. Olympic team, did stellar, and so yeah, that became my kind of 10-year experience with that coach, going from out of age because I started late, to all the way, from class three out of age to two to one to junior elite to senior elite, competing at USA championships a few times and
Mm.
at NT2As, part of the UC Berkeley Cal gymnastics team, co-team captain. Just a really rich, wonderful experience, but it definitely had its underbelly, in terms
Yeah.
of, striving for that perfect 10, perfectionism, the discipline and the hours and hours and the, doing things, despite, being injured or sore or burnt out or those kinds of things too. So it was both the best relationship of my life in many ways, in terms of a sport, and had a lot of, drawbacks and challenges that I had to work through too.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from folks that I know were in gymnastics, and that double-edged sword of it really pushes you to your finest
Yeah,
and to push your body to its maximum potential and that perfectionism. And as we know, that doesn't stop at gymnastics.
yeah.
That continues on in other domains. Can you say more about just your path to becoming a therapist?
Well, I was psychology at undergrad at, like I said, UC Berkeley, and my first job out of undergrad was working at a homeless organization. I guess they call it unhoused now, and St. Anthony Foundation in San Francisco, doing a variety of different jobs there. And, I kind of reached my capacity of sorts and was like, I want to do more than what I'm doing here. And I heard about an orientation of a Master's of Science in Counseling program at San Francisco State that they were having. I went and I was just like, this is it. Like, it was ringing off all the bells. It was in alignment. And I was like, well, let me just apply for this. If I don't get in, I'll actually look for a variety of different programs, research, see which ones resonate the most. But I applied and got in. So that kind of led me there. And after 3 years of doing it, both marriage, family, child counseling specialization and gerontology, I graduated and realized pretty early on that some of the internships I was having at agencies were more crisis oriented, case management, and not like the individual or couples therapy that I really wanted to do. So I started a private practice internship, found a supervisor, and pretty immediately after graduating, just a few months after, started my private practice internship. That was over 25 years ago now. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, congratulations on such a lengthy career, and I definitely resonate with the early years of being kind of launched into more crises, case
yeah,
management situations, which I appreciate, but having lived that, I also know that that just never felt sustainable. And one thing I love about our profession is the ability to grow. And I'm still figuring
yeah,
out how to bring myself into it more.
yeah,
We are Facebook friends, and I know from watching your videos that nature walks, being in nature, mindful hikes are a big part of your own self-care, but now you're bringing that work to a wider audience. So can you say more about how you brought that into your practice and also about living more fully?
sure, sure. Well, and just to take it back, it's been sort of a lifelong passion of mine, immersing myself in nature. Like the joke my mom and I had for the longest time was, I would go to summer camp. Before digital cameras were around, you have to get the photographs developed, right? And she would develop the camera, the film, and they'd all be of nature. She's like, "Where are the people?" And I'm like, "I just wanted to take pictures of nature. It's gorgeous out there." So that's kind of where it originated. The last 15 years or so, I've gone on annual trips with a couple other gay male therapists to Yosemite backpacking trips, and that spawned, a newfound appreciation for that kind of effort. And really, in the last 3 years, kind of at the height of the pandemic, realized, I just the gym no longer, even before the pandemic, didn't really inspire me, didn't really motivate me anymore. And so, but hiking and being in nature did. And so I signed up for the SoCal Pack of Six Peaks and did them, and did the extra six and lots of other ones, and decided to hike Mount Whitney, in many respects, the most challenging, difficult one for a lot of people, the highest peak in 49 of the 50 states except for Alaska. And then I was just having fun recording and taking pictures, the first couple of years. And then just this last year, I was like, let me blend sort of a guided meditation with filming my hikes and bridge my two loves, the love of nature and hiking and backpacking, and the love of psychology and transformation. And it just felt like the right combination. And so I've been learning and, evolving and hopefully improving, and hopefully will continue, but it's been really fun.
Yeah, I love that. And, I'm thinking about it from a couple of different places. One is that I think I know I can say this, and I think a lot of people feel like this call to nature that we've been so disconnected from.
Yeah.
And I think, especially now in these times when we have so many human made inventions that are have done good for the world but also have been problematic, and so I think about it from that lens. I also think about it from a queer person's perspective. When you were talking about the gym, that is sort of how myself as a young adult was kind of conditioned on how to feel in my environment and how to be connected to my body, but it actually never worked.
Mm,
I do like going to the gym for what it is, but there is something about, I think, connecting with your environment that
yeah.
just makes
Yeah.
sense, and it's so good for the brain, but also the body. Um, and this connection to our land that we're so not, many of us are just not connected to. And yeah, I think about this a lot as somebody who is my family's from the Philippines. I grew up here,
Mm,
and this feeling of always kind of being just, which I think a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds we are on, that we are disconnected from many of our ancestral homelands. And so everything from the weather to the trees is a bit different, but we're here, and obviously we're on indigenous land.
mm,
And so there's that in it, but also just how to be connected to this new land that many of us have roots in now. And it's, I mean, it's a whole complicated thing, but I just think it's really cool to think about how to be connected to nature when so many of us have been displaced or haven't been
absolutely.
connected.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's important to honor nature in the sense of protecting it and valuing it. And part of me just even recognizing that, with all the increasing fires and damage in forests and whatnot, like I want to utilize the time I have while things are in bloom and thriving to experience it. And being in my mid 50s, I hope I'm hiking well into my 80s, but that's not always the case. And so I want to be able to experience it now, record it, look back on it fondly, and remember those experiences. And there's certain principles like leave no trace, where whatever you bring into the wilderness, you take out with you. and not destroying it, not taking things from nature back with you. There's other sort of trail etiquette of like not blaring Bluetooth music while you're out there and other people are trying to enjoy sounds of nature and other kinds of things. So I think it can kind of overlap with some of those ideas and principles too.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of nature insights that you feel comfortable sharing?
Sure. Yeah. I've especially the past few months, I've really recognized how amazing some of the analogies, metaphors are with connecting our day-to-day or lived experience with nature. Like one that frequently comes up for clients of mine is just this idea of, geez, I thought I was making progress and then I regressed, or I'm not moving fast enough, or those kinds of things, right? And so, I think a lot of people have experiences, at least going on a walk at the beach or, at a park or something, maybe not hiking to a summit or backpacking, but, so bringing it back to these concepts of like even the idea of switchbacks, that because we're not going straight up the hill and exasperated and challenging as that may be, we're taking a longer way going up these crisscross diagonal switchbacks to the summit, and it feel like we're taking forever. Or in a lot of summits, there's moments of decline where you're losing elevation that you just gain, and it can feel like you're starting over. But recognizing that we're not at the trailhead, we're progressing towards our destination, and giving ourselves some space and permission to pace ourselves, to not have to like go at the fastest pace possible and then bonk out at the summit and not be able to return. There's a lot of concepts, I think, that are derived from the experience of hiking and being in nature that can be applicable to people's lived experience.
Yeah. There's something really like mindful about that, right? And how we preserve our energy, how we expend our energy, which is a great metaphor for life.
And I think that concept of mindfulness is great too, right? Because such an essential component of mindfulness is connecting to the present. And one way of doing that is through our five senses. And what a great opportunity when you're out there smelling different aromas and touching things and feeling the crunch beneath our feet, or, seeing, yeah, I like to go, at first light and being in the dark and seeing the stars and then seeing the light and then seeing the sunrise and seeing how it casts different shadows across the mountains as a hike. It is a mindfulness practice for me. It's not sitting meditation, but it's walking meditate, it's hiking meditation, it's immersing in nature mindfulness practice, which can really help in moments like today when we need to kind of unplug from the stressors, the wars, the atrocities, the everything else, come back home to ourselves so that we can go back into the world and approach those things from hopefully a bit more of a restored place.
Yeah, you're kind of touching on this on my next question, which is why does being in nature matter?
Mm-hmm.
In California, it's not a difficult thing to access. In most places in North America, it's not a difficult thing to do, but so I mean, people do it, but a lot of people don't. And I'm just curious, why does it matter to be in nature?
Well, it's going back to our roots, I think, in many ways. There's certainly been lots of scientific research to study that, like, for example, someone in a hospital bed, if they're watching even on the TV, inspirational nature scenes or whatever else, that it can calm the nervous system naturally. It can help people heal faster. There's just so many different benefits. It can increase our serotonin levels, our endorphins, as we're getting our heart rate up. It can help us slow down, reconnect. It doesn't require reaching a summit to experience these things. It literally, sometimes I just go to the local park lay on the grass, feel the grass beneath me, look up at the blue sky or cloudy sky or foggy sky or whatever it is, and breathe it in and be as present in that moment as possible.
Time for a break, and we'll return to our conversation with James Guay.
Mount Whitney isn't just a hike, it's a pilgrimage. This was my third summit in 3 years, my slowest on purpose. And along the way, I learned lessons, physical, psychological, and spiritual, that I want to share with you. There are some hikes that test your body, others test your mind. Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the United States outside of Alaska, tests your entire being. For me, this wasn't just a hike, it was a pilgrimage. Before this massive 22-mile day hike, I stopped in the Alabama hills for a short meditative walk. Passing through golden rocks and archways helped me find a quieter, more grounded mindset, moving just enough without overexertion.
You were listening to the voice of James Guay from his YouTube channel, Living More Fully. Now, let's return to the interview. Can you say more about your channel and your practice Living More Fully? And also, how have your clients, how has the greater community responded to your videos?
Sure. Well, first, a funny story about the living more fully concept. I have a colleague who was on a fellow board member on the board of directors for CAMP when I was there.
CAMFT is a professional organization that stands for California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists.
That would poke fun at me that he was going to create a website, livingevenmorefully.com. When I was thinking about like, what do I want my website name to be? I didn't want to put my name, although that's perfectly fine. I wanted something that really resonated and that was available. And so, yeah, just this concept of not just like surviving, but actually thriving and learning the difference and making that transition is really, really important for me in my own life as I've, like I said, gone from self-hatred to self-compassion and even self-love, not 24/7, but enough of the time. So that's kind of the inspiration behind that concept. Yeah, and as it relates to my YouTube channel, you know, I experimented with a few different things like talking about different psychological concepts while I'm out there in nature and bringing my microphone and doing all that, but that just felt a little, I don't know, odd or extra energy I didn't want to do. And so it made sense to do these guided meditations on various different principles, using the concept of immersion in nature and hopefully it's less boring than just a still picture on a screen with someone doing an audio, of a guided meditation. So for some people that want that.
Yeah, what I get from your work and your videos when you're in nature, it there's like a spiritual quality to it versus like a cerebral quality, and I think we're so cerebraled out.
Yeah.
Like I can be very intellectual, but sometimes getting it to the spirit takes a lot of work
Hmm.
because it really truly is. My experience with being super cerebral is sometimes it's like a defensive
Hmm.
stance, right, that we can intellectualize, but feeling it, and
Hmm.
there is something about being in nature that I think it's hard to be cerebral when you're in nature, right, because nature just is.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many. Virtually every hike I do, there's at least one moment where I just spontaneously go, wow, audibly, just whatever it is, the particular moment or scene, it's surprising. I don't know why, because I always have it, but I
Hmm.
love it. So yeah, yeah, I think it does help to connect the body with the mind, with the spirit in ways that are very unique. That's the more that we allow it to do. I remember the first year of really getting into it. It almost was like a competition with the All Trails app and other people's speeds. And not that I wasn't enjoying the moments, but I realized I was trying to, come at it particular, do the hike at a particular speed. And the second year I was like, let me do this differently. Let me just breathe in, pace, enjoy. And this year it's even further. Like I summited Mount Whitney just this past Saturday for the third consecutive year. And this year I took 2 extra hours out there. I was out there 17 and a half hours.
Wow.
And I wanted to take longer, one, to pace myself differently and enjoy it more and suffer less. It was still challenging. But two, to really stop and breathe and take it in and let it be transformative in ways that it wouldn't be for me. Maybe it would be for someone else trying to do it as quickly as possible. But for me, I needed to slow down and really absorb it to feel all the nutrients that it had to provide.
Yeah. My friend Elkie, who is on episode 5, I believe, of the podcast, talks a lot about her journey to get through these difficult times is leaning into beauty and connection. And that's really stuck with me, and it made me think about how you get that. Like, you clearly get the natural beauty of being outdoors, but you also get the connection to yourself, which sometimes we don't always get in our busy everyday lives. And if you're hiking with someone else, you get that kind of person to person connection. But that connection to yourself and knowing what you want and need and what you pace yourself, there's just something so that feels so radical about it, because it's something we don't a lot of us don't do in our everyday lives.
Yeah. It's a great practice. It really, and it does take practice. It doesn't necessarily happen automatically. You can't expect to go out for the first time on a hike and have a life altering experience. You might, but it really is about being curious about our own internal experience. It's about being mindful in the present. It's about noticing when our mind goes elsewhere and maybe bringing it back to the trail or letting it go where it needs to go in that moment in time. Sometimes people use it to work through writing or books or projects or whatever else. And so there's lots of ways of doing it. But I think the practice for me is really listening to the wisdom of my body in terms of pacing, in terms of fuel, hydration, pack weight, destination. Do I need to pivot? Weather change, there's smoke in the air quality differences. There was a recent hike that I took to Cloud's Rest in Yosemite. Planned on pitching my tent near Half Dome the next morning, or that night to summit the next morning. And I was like, you know what? I'm exhausted. I don't want to do Half Dome. And I need enough fuel and energy to get back to the trailhead. And so, I could have seen that as a failure, but I was like, no, it's a success because I was listening to my needs and what my body was telling me. And I had gorgeous 360 views from the summit of Cloud's Rest. What am I complaining about? I'll do Half Dome a different time.
Well, and looping it back to young people and gymnastics, I think that's kind of the opposite experience, right? You
Yeah,
just push through. This
yeah,
hurts, well, you got to just push through. And there's something about knowing that there's a different way. And I think gymnastics culture is changing. I think our culture is hopefully changing around some of these things. And that's why it almost feels, I mean, I use the word radical, but it's a gentler, easier, connecting way of being that we need.
yeah. Yeah, there was an experience my junior year of college at Berkeley, and I was in a competition. I came down from an iron cross in the rings, which literally looks like a
Yeah.
cross, right? And instead of moving my shoulders one way or another, I came down in the center. It popped my sternoclavicular
Wow.
joint. And I continued the routine, and I remember being in a handstand going, I don't know if doing a dismount, if I'm going to peel off, because I don't know if I have the strength right now after this sprain, this injury, to hold on long enough to do the half in, half out, the full twisting double back dismount that I was going to
Mm.
do. And I did it, but then I couldn't lift my hands over my arms. I was out the rest of the season pretty
Wow.
much. I couldn't sleep on my side. I had to have lots and lots of rehab. And were I that age now with this lived experience, I would have hopped off that event in a heartbeat
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's what I needed to do. But that's not what I was told then. I was like, these glory stories of working through injuries and getting the
Yeah.
perfect 10 or the gold or whatever. And that was what was in my brain. That's what I had
Yeah.
internalized.
Yeah. I mean, that was the age of the Carollis. The Carollis were a controversial women's gymnastics coaching team that really influenced what gymnastics culture would become here in the United States. They were no nonsense, pushed through. And that's why I think what happened in 2021 with Simone Biles was just so
Mhm.
powerful. I'm referring, of course, to Olympic champion Simone Biles, who famously withdrew from the 2021 Olympics after a mental block known as the twisties. I gotta, I got to take care of myself
Yeah.
before putting my body at risk. Yeah.
So inspirational and so much criticism and judgment from people who have this sort of you have to do it regardless mindset. But it was powerful and I think transformative for many, many people. Yeah.
How has your clients responded to living more fully, to the nature walks and the mindful hikes? And how is the greater community that you reach? How have they responded to your work?
I'm not doing it to be viral. And I mean, it's fine if it does, but I would like to just have it reach people that it impacts, whether that's a handful or more. I've had some really meaningful, sweet comments that's been very helpful in a variety of ways. Some of the analogies I've used with clients, it helps them to see their own experience in a different way, gives them permission to, again, be human. There's been some light bulb moments, not every time. YouTube's a funky thing. It takes, a year or 2 years sometimes for the algorithm to find the people that value the content that you make. And so if I didn't love doing it in the first place, I would have probably given up by now. But because I find it intrinsically rewarding, like even filming out there feels like I'm looking differently and experiencing it more. And then editing, it took me probably 17 hours to edit a film for Mel Whitney that I just did the last 3 days. But there's something about watching over and over and putting music and words to it and scripting and all that stuff that helps to, I don't know, for me to absorb it even further than when I was out there.
Yeah, there's something when I was looking at your videos and looking at people to bring onto my podcast, I was drawn to you because it just felt so like I felt so much passion from your
Mhm.
videos and being out there, and there was a level of authenticity and vulnerability and passion, like that you were really passionate about this, and it didn't matter who was watching it. Vulnerability, authenticity, that's what connects us, and that's what we're drawn to. I was certainly drawn to it, and that does come across in your videos. And of course, it doesn't hurt that there's beautiful landscapes and being in nature when we're watching it in our homes and wanting to be there. Yeah, do you have any advice for anyone that might feel kind of stuck in their rut or might be stuck in their perfectionism? and want to live more fully, but have a really hard time accessing that. This could be a gymnast who was socialized that way, or that could be really anybody that wants to live more fully but has a hard time accessing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for those kind compliments, and I'm glad it comes across because I am very passionate. I could talk about hiking and backpacking all day. um, but in terms of the advice for someone like that, I think it's the opposite of what they imagine. It's not about doing more, it's about doing less. It's not about being perfect, it's about being imperfect, which is going to be grating. It's like nails on the chalkboard. They're not going to want to do it, right? But I would really, really encourage people to slow down, to do less, and to give credit for even small incremental steps towards your
Mm,
goal. So, if it's been forever since you've been to the gym and you want to be more physically active, count parking further away
mm,
to the retail store and walking further, or walking around the block. Or it doesn't have to be a 2 hour workout 7 days a week. You know what I mean? That's not sustainable, right? So starting really, really small and giving yourself credit, and that's the practice. It's not just the external in what you do; it's how you navigate the internal messaging, like, oh, that's not good enough, or I could be doing more, or I'm lazy, or whatever the messaging
yeah.
is, right? And breathing some kindness, some gentleness. You might get 3 seconds of it. And maybe that's a good day, you know? And you just start wherever you are and expand from there as slowly and consistently as
Mm,
possible.
yeah. Yeah. That sometimes slow and steady wins the race, right? That we don't have to
As they
urgently
say.
get the instant gratification, that gratification can be
Yeah.
paced, right?
Yeah, yeah. And maybe even like playing with it a little bit, like, being a little messy, or, you know, purposefully doing less than you could or want to, just to experiment with being three-dimensional and different ways of doing
Yeah.
things. There's a variety of different ways to kind of approach this stuff when the internalized structures, more and more and more, produce, 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 perfection, perfection, perfection. That's not a life well lived. It limits our ability to fully enjoy life.
Yeah. Yeah, and bringing it back to nature, that's what I love about what you're doing and just nature in general. It
Mhm.
has its own pace. We're not
Mhm.
competing with
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's its own pace, its own rhythm. Seasons can change the same trails we've been on many times, lighting, weather. It's really utilizing whatever experiences we have in the present moment to do that kind of internal work, to be kinder, to become our own best friend, or at least a better friend to
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah, James, where can listeners find out more about you and living more fully?
Well, my website's livingmorefully.com. My Instagram's James Gay LMFT, and Gay is spelled Guay. And then my YouTube channel, if you look up my name, James Gay, Guay, or just type in Living More Fully, it'll direct you to my YouTube channel.
Perfect. And we'll have those links in the description box for the episode. I have one more question.
Oh, yes.
And this is the question
Uh,
that people love, people hate, but
uh,
it'll be interesting to see. I think you'll have fun with it. So this is the three
yeah.
albums question. If you were stranded on a deserted island, and let's assume that deserted island had lots of beautiful hikes, you can and beautiful trails, but you're stranded with three albums that you were with for the rest of your life. What would those three albums be?
Yeah, yeah, I did think about this one. Like I think a lot of your guests do. Well, growing up, a lot of the gymnast friends, peers I had, loved heavy metal.
Mm.
And so my first concert was Scorpions. I also went to Aerosmith and Guns N' Roses and lots of others like that. And so, I have and if, whenever I hear that, it conjures up those memories and appreciation. I think, though, I would actually like someone who's updated. I just came across him recently and I've been listening to his album on repeat, and he's really great. His name is Youngblood, or the name he goes by.
Okay.
And so, he's pansexual, which I like,
Mm,
and, seems really kind and caring, but kind of a rock star too. And so, so that would be one.
okay.
First, I'd like a playlist, but yeah, if I have to choose three albums, I'll choose that. Another person throughout my life that I've listened to, I get it can be a bit gloomy, but I think her new album, based on her first single of it, I'd probably bring once it comes out in the next few weeks. Sarah McLachlan,
Oh,
been to her concert as well, which is
yeah.
fantastic. So such and meaning and depth. Yeah.
She's great. I think she's a lot of people's who are around our age group. I think everybody was
Mhm.
sort of moved by her because her music is so poetic and
Oh
beautiful.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What was the album?
Oh, her current one that's going to be out soon.
Oh,
I've only heard one song, but
okay.
when I went to her last concert, she was talking about her new music being a little less gloom and doom and a little more
Ah,
life affirming. So I'm assuming that's
okay.
what this one will be too.
Yeah,
I prefer that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then third, I have very diverse music interests and tastes. It'd probably be something classical like Chopin or something. So,
Yes, yes. I've been hearing more and more classical, and it just makes sense. Like
mhm,
being in
mhm.
nature. Oh, that's a great image, right?
Right?
Being in nature with classical music, letting nature sing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, James, before we wrap up, is there anything that I didn't ask, or is there anything that you feel compelled to say that you didn't get a chance to say?
Uh, I mean, I guess I want to say that I really appreciate you putting this together and putting this out in the public sphere. I think really helping people to understand, like, how do so many of us try to cope and deal with the stressors of today, politically and otherwise, and find inspiration and connection. And it's so timely, and I think you're the perfect person to kind of put this out there. And so I appreciate your work in that regard.
Oh, thank you so much. And I appreciate the work you're doing. I appreciate you reminding us to connect to the simple things like the world around us, and that could be our best medicine to get through these times. So thank you for the work you're doing. I feel so grateful for this interview with James, hearing about how his earlier life story influenced his path to living more fully. James reminds us of the importance of nature hikes as both a self care tool and a way of staying connected to ourselves as we endure the challenges of living in difficult times. Recording this episode, I thought about a famous quote by environmentalist John Muir. The quote is, "The clearest way into the universe is through a forest wilderness." I hope this episode inspires you to take some time this week to be out in nature and slow down, reflect, and reconnect with all the natural beauty this world offers. Thanks again for listening to Out is Through. Until next time. The views expressed by the speakers are their own, and their appearance on the podcast does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Out is Through is a podcast for entertainment and educational purposes only. It's not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are in need of support, please seek out a licensed mental health professional in your area.